Hi everyone. I thought that I would make a video on this original character of mine since he's appeared twice now on my channel. This will be the third time. He's in another speed paint I did, as well as an animatic thing that I did a little while ago. So I wanted to tell you more about him and his world. To start off, his name is Osiris. Osiris Anastas is his full name. Osiris is an Egyptian god from Egyptian mythology and was the god of the dead and judge of the underworld. Osiris is the Greek form, I believe, of another Egyptian name. And then Anastas is also Greek, and it means resurrection. I chose both of these names because they relate pretty heavily to Osiris's powers, which I'll explain in a bit. So, Osiris is from a fantasy world that I created. In the world, there are gods. The god that created Osiris and others like Osiris. She's the god of life and death, and her name is Holdelk. She's very, very old, and she lives in the Hemthar Mountains. She created Reapers, is the working title, but essentially their job is to keep life and death in balance. Reapers are able to see and manipulate the life force of people around them, and this is not always beneficial to them. They also sustain themselves off of the life force of other living things, so it also makes them dangerous if they don't know how to handle their powers, which many Reapers don't because they're not super common. And in the world, they're obviously very hated because of their abilities and what they represent to people. But Reapers don't just kill things, and most of the time, it was meant for Reapers to just take life kind of at the end of a cycle, or from creatures that became more powerful, again keeping that balance of the world in check. Reapers can also heal things, can heal creatures, and grow plant life. But Reapers don't really have a life force or a life core of their own that other creatures have. Technically they do. They have souls and stuff, but theirs isn't pre-charged as other creatures are. They have to charge them using other creatures and other living things, their cores. And any living thing will have a core. Plants, animals, people, all of that. Reapers need other things to charge their own. Their life core kind of uses up that power a lot faster than a normal creatures would, and when normal creatures run out of power, they just die, right? But for Reapers like Osiris, they need other things to sustain it. When Reapers' charge is depleted, they kind of, as it starts to deplete, they have a gradient, a dark gradient that kind of sometimes forms patterns along their limbs, their arms and their legs specifically. Kind of just the gradient kind of reaches higher and higher as their charge is depleted. Their hands also become a bit more like claw-like as that happens as well. That's one of the first things that happens. Most Reapers will constantly kind of have claw-like fingers and that dark gradient, unless they've recently become fully charged again. And of course, they always have their yellow eyes, which glow when they use their power. Reapers' own bodies won't let them die of a depleted core charged. when it's almost completely depleted, that transformation that they slowly go through as the charge depletes takes over them completely, and they kind of turn into these skeleton kind of creatures. Their physical body's still there. They kind of become a little bit other, and their senses are heightened, and they kind of lose control over their physical functions. It's kind of like instinct. If you know about biology, humans have an amygdala, which controls a lot of that, the instinct and emotions like flight or flight and fear and anger. That kind of takes over as the primary functioning instrument of the Reapers, and they kind of turn into almost beast-like, and will somewhat sort of rampage until they can fully recharge their energy core. I'll link the video in the description, and I'll put it up in the little box up here, but if you watch the animatic that I did a little bit ago, it's kind of like an action sequence. It's 9 seconds. It literally takes no time to watch it, but you'll see kind of what that creature looks like when Reapers are in that form. So when Reapers are born, they don't have anything in their core. There's like maybe a little, but they have to immediately recharge, and sometimes this is very unfortunate because it often results in the death of a parent or a midwife or nurse. It isn't great, and often leads to them being abandoned, or in some cases even killed as children. But if they are able to get that initial charge and survive past that, they usually won't have to recharge until they reach maturity and their powers have also matured, because that's when the energy core will start depleting faster. In the case of Osiris, there was a midwife present at the time, and since babies come out head first, she was able to see the golden, glowy-ish eyes. The eyes don't glow unless they're using their powers. For Reapers, their eyes will glow immediately when they're born. So she immediately recognized Osiris as a Reaper because she'd had a previous experience. And she is smart enough to get her assistant to get a goat, which Osiris takes the life of, and uses it to charge his energy core. After that, Osiris's birth mother didn't really want anything to do with him and told the midwife to just take care of it, get rid of him. The midwife, being a brilliant, loving woman, she takes Osiris to a wealthy family, semi-wealthy. They're merchants, but they recently had a child, but learned that they wouldn't be able to have another one despite them wanting to, and the midwife knows about them, so she takes Osiris to them. She doesn't tell them, and currently my working backstory is that she doesn't tell them about his powers because she doesn't want them to reject him too. But she does warn them that he is different. He does have abilities, so she doesn't like completely just thrust him on them blind. So Osiris grows up with his sister Zahira, and they're very well off, fairly privileged. He has private lessons, tutoring lessons. He's training to take over the merchant business from his mother, and overall just doing pretty well for himself. And his sister Zahira, she's training to become a palace, kind of like a city guard, They guard the walls, they protect the citizens from outside threats, essentially soldier. And but one time when Zahra is visiting one of the guard posts, because this is her passion ever since she was little, and his parents are bringing them there, and he's left with the house staff and himself to play with. And he's about 12. He's about 12 when he goes out into this field that he and Zahra usually play around in, behind the house, and he finds a wounded deer. He's obviously scared, but he also meets a stranger who's just passing through, and her name is Mirchen. And Mirchen, she also is a reaper. Immediately, Osiris makes this connection because they both have the same yellow golden eyes and the dark gradient patterns along their skin. So they recognize each other almost instantly as the same. And Mirchen offers to show Osiris how to save this deer. And she does, but unfortunately, Mirchen hasn't exactly been educated on Reapers. Most of stuff about her powers she's found out on her own. But when she is helping Osiris heal the deer, she uses up the last of her energy core. And that's where that action sequence came in that I was talking about earlier that I animated. That's kind of an excerpt from the scene where she turns into that other creature, and these creatures, they obviously don't recognize anything. They'll attack anything that seems to have a life force, including another Reaper. So Mirchen in this state does, and Osiris is barely able to fight her off, but he does it, and she leaves. So that I can talk about another time, but Osiris is now terrified because he knows what he is, and for the first time he thought he wasn't so bad, having to cover up the markings with gloves and people asking about his eyes all the time. But now he finally met someone like him, and he learned he could do this amazing things of healing, but now he also knows that it comes at a cost, and that cost is unfortunately turning into a rampaging creature if he isn't kept in check. And he doesn't know at this point that taking another thing's life force, again, this can be plants, this can be animals, this can be other people, anything, right? But he doesn't know this yet. He just knows that he could turn into this terrifying beast if he uses his healing powers. So that kind of scars him a bit from there on out. So as Osiris gets older, it starts becoming harder and harder for him to hide what he is. People kind of start asking questions, and